from St. Louis Public Radio. This is St. Louis on the Air.
A lot of physicians really want some chronic pain patients and others to be able to try medical cannabis instead of opioids, but they don't necessarily want you smoking it all the time for certain ailments, right? So it's really important that we have those wide array of edibles, vapors, tinctures, and others.
And Brennan, this sounds like something where, as you were describing the mission of the Cola Lounge, if people have never tried any of these things, they're not sure what's right for them. It sounds like that might be an educational experience right there that would meet their needs.
Yes, definitely. And we not only are all of our volunteers trained in how to help people through first-time enjoyable experiences, but we also work with patient consultants as they're learning the profile and the formula of how cannabis works the best for them.
I'm Sarah Fensky. Missouri's medical marijuana program recently hit a milestone. It cleared 100,000 state residents to use cannabis legally. It notched that number in less than 6 months. And those users aren't just in name only. The state is about to reach $40 million cumulatively in sales. 92 dispensaries are now approved to operate. Another 100 are on the way. And here to discuss the latest is Jack Cardetti. He is a spokesman for the Missouri Medical Cannabis Trade Association. Jack, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Sarah.
And we're also joined by Brennan England. He is the head of the Missouri chapter of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. He also founded the Cola Lounge. That's the state's first cannabis consumption lounge, and the St. Louis Cannabis Club. So, Brennan, welcome.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Jack, let's start with you. Can you put these numbers in context for us? Are we, in fact, seeing the promised green rush here in Missouri?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting news in the state of Missouri. Like you said, 102,000 Missourians now have their medical marijuana card. We just have broken a weekly sales record not too long ago with $3.3 million of marijuana sold in the state of Missouri. But first and foremost, this is about helping patients. So we now have 102,000 patients that can go and have access to a dispensary in their community, not having to drive halfway across the state so they can access their medicine. At the same time, we know this is having a positive impact on the Missouri economy at a time when, frankly, we need it the most.
So how does that level of participation, how does that compare to choose a neighboring state to Illinois?
Well, sure. When Illinois had a medical cannabis program, there were significantly fewer patients that had enrolled. Now, obviously, Illinois is now an adult use program. But again, it is fairly hard to find a dispensary over in Illinois. There are less than 60 dispensaries operating throughout the entire state of Illinois, even though they're an adult use market and they have twice the population that Missouri has. So one of the things we're really proud about is that there's really good patient access here in Missouri. You're not going to have to drive halfway across the state because as we speak right now, there are 137 facilities that are approved to operate in the state of Missouri, cultivators, manufacturers, dispensaries, and there's even more coming online.
This is a lot of energy there. Brennan, how does it feel to you as a cannabis entrepreneur here in Missouri? Are you feeling that energy?
Yes, definitely. We're feeling it. We're definitely feeling the buzz, pun intended, with not only what's going on with the industry, but also how the existing culture is really gearing up for that. One of the things that we specialize with the St. Louis Cannabis Club is that it's a resource network connecting the existing cannabis consumer, the existing cannabis culture, with the oncoming cannabis industry, and vice versa. One of the things with a lot of these brands is they're coming into a new market, is that they underestimate how rich and nuanced cannabis culture is, and that comes with morals and codes and a glossary of terms that you won't know unless you know, and that's something that we pride ourselves on being the stewards of here for Missouri in a safe and responsible and fun way, is helping these brands, these dispensaries and cultivators connect in a really authentic way and in authentic places with consumers. And so we're seeing that piece really effervesce. The other piece that is extremely important is our caregiver network and our home cultivators that are growing at home on a craft level directly for patients. That's actually that gives an even further extension of access than the dispensaries themselves when we have registered licensed cultivators that are able to create quality medicine for patients and also teach them how to grow their own.
So sort of take some of the commercialization out of the aspect if people want to avoid that, and they can make it more of, I've got just a couple plants here at home.
Completely. And there are benefits and dovetails to the corporate and home cultivator market. And I think that the strongest brands are going to be the ones that do that with grace.
Brandon, something else I wanted to make sure our listeners were up to speed on. You're the founder of the Cola Lounge. This is the state's first cannabis consumption lounge. What does that mean? Is that like a bar for pot?
Kind of. It's a space where cannabis consumers can come and safely enjoy cannabis in whatever method they prefer to consume. You can smoke on site here. We're a private property where you can bring your own cannabis. We don't sell cannabis. We are not a dispensary, but we focus on the pillars of education, wellness, entertainment, and economy. And we build those in the lounge here. So we have recreational space where you can do things like play games or play pool. But we also integrate co-working features like being able to stream or cast up to our televisions to project numbers for your business or show off your grow if you're a home cultivator to potential patients. So and then we also have a kitchen where our kitchen becomes a large educational component because we teach people how to safely infuse and extract to get the most out of their medicine at home. One of the other huge components is that we have a bud bar where we have everything from flower to extract equipment to know how to smoke and know how to vape. And so we have a lot of seasoned vets that come up and just want to try out what they're used to using, but it becomes much more so an education space where new users are able to onboard to these options of how to use a pipe, how to use electronic vaporizers so that you don't need a flame and you get controlled temperature. These are important things for people to have enjoyable first-time experiences, and for some people, how they're going to get the most out of their medicine. For the most at-need patients, they need to know how to get the most out of their medicine, and we're here to show them how to do that.
Well, if you have participated in Missouri's medical marijuana program, we're curious to hear from you. We're going to open up those phone lines. We want to know how it went for you. And if you're interested in it, but you haven't yet participated, we're curious to hear what's held you back. Call us at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. You can also send us a tweet at STL on air, or you can email us at talk@stlpr.org. And Jack, I wanted to follow up on something. Last time you were here on the show, this was a few months ago. At that point, edibles were still kind of a promise. They were something that you were hoping would become available soon for Missouri patients. Has that changed?
Yeah, it really has. We've seen a lot of that over the last 2 months, and I think that's one of the reasons you're seeing sales increase, but you're also seeing more people go out and get their medical cannabis card here in Missouri. This is a crop, so it has to be grown. Everything has to come from the cultivation, and so the first thing on the shelf here in Missouri was flower, regular smokable medical cannabis. But then what we've seen so far, and what we'll continue to see, is then other delivery mechanisms, right? So edibles, tinctures, vapes, and others, and concentrates. And so you now can walk into your local dispensary and find a wider array of products, but 2 months from now, there'll be even more selection, better prices, and more of those delivery mechanisms. A lot of physicians really want some chronic pain patients and others to be able to try medical cannabis instead of opioids, but they don't necessarily want you smoking it all the time for certain ailments, right? So it's really important that we have those wide array of edibles, vapors, tinctures, and others that are available to our Missouri patients.
And Brendan, this sounds like something where, as you were describing the mission of the Cola Lounge, if people have never tried any of these things, they're not sure what's right for them. It sounds like that might be an educational experience right there that would meet their needs.
Yes, definitely. And we not only are all of our volunteers trained in how to help people through first time enjoyable experiences, but we also work with patient consultants that will work directly long term with patients as they're learning the profile and the formula of how cannabis works the best for them as a medicine. One of the biggest things too, that when we're talking about edibles, that is a problem, is a criticism I have of the edibles market, is that the edibles market, it comes out first swinging heavy with sugary treats, which is contraindicated, sometimes on paper contraindicated for our most at-need patients, let alone that sugar is an inflammatory no matter what you're healing from. And so, as we're moving forward, I think there's going to be more of a challenge and a pushback from the wellness and the medical community for these for these processors to really step up their game and put out more than gummies and sodas first for our most at-need patients. And that's one of the things that we supplement here at the lounge, is teaching people about the breadth of how it goes boldly beyond the brownie with which how you can consume your cannabis.
Brennan, I appreciate you saying that, because I feel very ignorant now. I've just always associated it with sweet things. Do these infusions work well with things that might be more of a health type of food product?
Oh, completely. The flavor wheel of cannabis is as diverse as any other flavor wheel of tea or coffee or wine, but that goes into the spectrum of fruits to herbaceous notes and earthy notes, and it's just as sophisticated. Actually, STL NPR covered just last week, did a special on a culinary chef group that I work with that does private dinners and education dinners here, on how to do. They did an entire savory taco and street corn meal, and it was delicious. And so whenever we move out of the cultural connotation of what the plant is and what it does, and we move into really all of the things it can do and the ways it fits naturally, it fits actually better with savory food than it does with sweet food.
We do want to let people know that story if they're interested in reading more about that chef's club that Brennan referred to. That's there on our website, stlpr.org. We'll also make sure to put that on our St. Louis on the Air Twitter for those who might be interested in getting up to speed with that initiative. And our guests today are Brennan England. He's the head of the Missouri chapter of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. He also founded the Cola Lounge. That's the state's first cannabis consumption lounge. We're also joined by Jack Cardetti. He's a spokesman for the Missouri Medical Cannabis Trade Association. I'm going to go to the phone lines here. Just want to remind you, our phone lines are open. If you're interested in talking about your experience with Missouri's program, 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Let's go to Blake, who's calling from St. Louis. Blake, hi. You're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hey, how you doing? Good afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. What has your experience been with this program?
I tell you what, honestly, I got my medical marijuana card a year earlier, way before COVID had ever hit, and was just waiting around for the dispensaries to open. And finally, when they opened, I had to renew my card. But the experience has been pretty good. I mean, honestly, and I've been up to the Cola Lounge. It's a wonderful place with wonderful atmosphere and wonderful people. Actually.
Well, Blake, thank you for that recommendation. Brennan, I'm sure that's great to hear. Blake loves the atmosphere there.
Oh yes, it is, and we're personal with our members. I know Blake. What's up, Blake? Thanks for calling in. I appreciate you.
Yeah, Blake, thank you for that call. I want to go back to the phone lines. Ruthie is calling from Warren County. Ruthie, hi. You're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hi, thank you. Love the topic today.
Thank you. I'm curious to hear about your experience. Are you registered as a patient in Missouri's program?
Yes, I am. Both myself and my husband use medical marijuana, and it has helped conditions that I didn't even know I had.
So you feel healthier all around, not just with the individual things you'd sought it out for?
Yes, we both do. Depending on the medicine that I choose, I can have more focus, and be able to participate in more activities. and it makes me a more active person. And then there's a type of cannabis that when we need to sleep, it can help us with that. And I have lots of friends that have used it. Insomnia, it's a huge deal.
Ruthie, thank you for that. And Brennan, I think that's a good point to mention here for people who might not be familiar with cannabis. There are different strands for different needs. That, again, I assume that's something you're helping consumers with.
Yes, definitely. And it's nuanced because, it's not cookie cutter, depending on what someone's starting place is in their healing journey, completely determines where they need to spoke out from there. For instance, I personally suffer from hyperactivity disorders, but I also have severe gastrointestinal issues. And so I have a dual need for cannabis. And it was a learning experience for me to know that because of my hyperactivity, I don't need the Ritalin of cannabis that speeds me up, but I actually need very grounding cannabis that helps keep me, slows me down and keeps me more in my body, which also helps with my digestion. And so that is the importance of every person taking on their healing journey from where their starting point is, because everyone has their own needs with the plant. But like she's saying, that's part of the magic of this plant, is that it has ways to help us in all of these different ways.
Well, we want to thank Ruthie for that question. Let's go back to the phone lines. Alex is calling from Webster Groves. Hi, Alex. You're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hi, long-time listener, first-time caller. I'm just curious how Missouri employers are reacting to the medical and their abilities of drug testing people and firing or hiring people because of that.
Alex, that's a great question, and I have a feeling we could probably spend an entire hour at our legal roundtable digging into that. But, Jack, I'm curious if you have a sense of whether that has been a problem for some of these patients, that employers are not ready, even if state voters were.
We haven't heard widespread issues with that. There is generally a difference between an employee showing up on the work site, especially if they're working with heavy equipment or something like that, being impaired, and a patient being able to, after they're done with work for the day, to treat medical ailments, what we think is in the safest, safest, best way possible. And so I think as long as patient or employees kind of stick with that, they should be fine. It's not something that we've really had a ton of pushback on from employers throughout the state.
Well, that's good to hear at this point. Certainly, if that changes, that would be something we would attempt to cover on this show. So I appreciate that question, Alex, and we'll all kind of keep an eye on that. Let's go back to the phone lines. Jonathan is calling from Kirkwood. Jonathan, hi. You're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hello. How are you today?
Thanks for joining us. What's your question about?
My question is about there's a little codicil in the law, and I can't quote it, but I remember hearing about it, that being registered for medical marijuana meant you couldn't own firearms or buy firearms.
That is not something I'm familiar with. Jack, is there something in the law to that effect?
Yeah, in the 1960s, the United States government passed a law that basically says you cannot use illegal drugs and have a firearm. Now, of course, there are 40 states almost where some form of cannabis is legal now, but it is still illegal on the federal level. And so where this really comes into play, and the ATF and others aren't looking for this, but where this comes into play is you go to purchase a new firearm. You go to purchase a new firearm, they're going to ask you on that form whether or not you use a federally illegal substance, even if it's legal in the state of Missouri. And so that's where the problem comes in.
And if they're asking that, does that mean they would turn you down for the firearm?
Yeah, they could potentially do that.
Okay.
Yes. And again, that's not something, unfortunately, that we can really change at the state level or something that could have been changed in the state constitution. We really need the federal government, like we do on several cannabis reform issues, to make changes here. Until the federal law is changed, that's going to be an issue, even though it's not heavily enforced right now.
Yeah, and Jack, I don't want to open up a big can of worms in our final minutes here, but I understand that's a big part when it comes to the banking as well, that the feds are just way behind the states on this. Is that right?
Yeah, and quite frankly, it is a huge problem in the industry, and it's also one of the reasons that we see quite frankly, a lack of diversity in the industry. We know that it is significantly statistically harder for people of color, including African Americans, to start a small business. Yet when you're talking about an industry where you can't go down to a local bank and get a loan, you can't get an SBA loan, you can't get federal grants or anything like that, we know it really hurts the ability to have a broad, diverse, industry here in the state of Missouri. So the United States House of Representatives has passed what's called the Safe Banking Act, and now it sits over with the U.S. Senate. We need them to pass that. It's going to help our members and operators. It's going to be good for consumers, patients that aren't having to deal with cash and all the time, and we think it's going to lead to a more diverse industry.
Brennan, in our final minute here, I know this is very important to you and you really see activism at the heart of your interest in the medical cannabis industry. Would legalization and decriminalization moving forward also solve some of these problems?
Not without expungement. If we're not looking at equity as how we repair centuries of systemic abuse and societal stereotypes, because it's not just about access. It's not just allowing bank access, which I agree with Jack. That's important. Mm-hmm. It's a very important piece. But we're talking about centuries of systemic abuse, not just on the cultural level, but on the psychological level. That there are entire communities of Black people that are still completely shy away from the idea of legal cannabis because of the stigma that's been put in culturally of the danger. Not the cannabis plant itself, but of the policing, and the cultural connotations of not being able to get a job.
And Brennan, unfortunately, we are out of time on this today, but you're right, that's such an important issue, and expungement, I think, needs to be the next big thing that we talk about. So Brennan England, head of the Missouri chapter of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, thank you for joining us today.
Definitely.
And Jack Cardetti, spokesman for the Missouri Medical Cannabis Trade Association, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.